As much as I like the other characters we've met in Rinascita, the person I'm most interested in so far has got to be Cristoforo. The guy appears in the best looking fractsidus uniform thus far, is super mysterious, and seems to be the smart and scheming type. While his fellow overseers appear like they have more than a single screw loose, Cristoforo takes on the appearance of a suave and worldly Renaissance man. Despite this, he is clearly still a villain, given he has been involved in more than one nefarious plot in Rinascita. The only thing we don't know much about, aside from his motivations, are his abilities. There are hints that it has something to do with changing fate or using stories to rewrite reality, but what exactly can Cristoforo do? If he indeed can alter existence on a whim, does this make him the most dangerous person we have seen so far? That's what I want to discuss in this video, Cristoforo's abilities and how they work. Before we dive deeper into that though, if you want to see more Wuthering Waves content, do consider subscribing to the channel. Like with most of my other lore videos, there will be quite a few spoilers in this one, given the topic. So if you're not caught up with the latest Wuthering Waves story, then consider this your obligatory spoiler warning. Let's start off with a little bit of backstory. Cristoforo is actually one of the very first people we meet when Rover arrives in Rinascita. As we observe the pilgrim sail prepared to depart, Cristoforo walks over and stops us from doing something stupid. He gives us a brief introduction on this new region and explains the complex religious culture that exists here. Upon asking him who he is, Cristoforo introduces himself as a traveling playwright and is in Ragusa in search of inspiration for his latest work. After this brief exchange, he leaves and we go about our rovering business. From here on out, Cristoforo appears several times throughout our journey and is often nearby when something big or important happens. When the fractsidus appear outside Averardo Vault, he can be seen loitering in their lobby. When we meet up with Carlotta right before being attacked, he also appears within earshot. During Shakona's backstory, he appears briefly to question her about her past, and later is even shown colluding with Primus Fenrico. By the end of the 2.0 story, he appears once more to discuss the events of Rinascita with Frolova, which confirms his association with the fractsidus. Despite his constant appearances, we don't really see him do much outside of just talk, and only when we reach Septimont in 2.4 do we really get a taste of what Cristoforo is capable of. Now just to be clear, we don't actually know the full scope of his abilities, given we've never actually seen him use them. Aspects of it are explained during the 2.4 story, but it's done so in bits and parts. So while we can piece together how Cristoforo's abilities work, just be aware that this might change once more about him is revealed. During our nighttime catch-up with Frolova, she provides several hints that Cristoforo's abilities are related to stories and altering fate. She mentions that Cartethia, Lupa, and the Rover are currently caught up in the fate that Cristoforo has spun, and that Septimon is not as it appears. Her words make it sound like Cristoforo can manipulate or change reality itself, and while Rover suspects this to be the case, they don't believe it to be the whole story. If the fractsidus did indeed have someone as powerful as this on their side, they would have taken over Solaris a long time ago. As such, the Rover reasons that either the abnormalities in Septimont currently occur outside of the existing reality, or the Overseer's ability has limits. Being the main character, Rover's assumptions are both indeed correct. You see, Cristoforo can really weave and change fate, but he does it through creating an alternate version of reality contained within a Sonorosphere. Once certain conditions are met, he can then overlay the Sonorosphere onto reality itself, likely overwriting fate with his story. This means that the events we see play out in Septimont are happening in a separate world, much like what both Rover and Bu Ling suspect. For all intents and purposes, his power is basically to manifest his own fanfiction within its own domain and then later apply it to reality. Now, if you don't trust Cristoforo despite him outright saying this, both Cartethia and Lupa confirm this to be the case as well. When we meet back up with Cartethia at the end of 2.4, she mentions that within Cristoforo's unique Sonoro, stories can manifest into reality. When Lupa regains her memories, she recalls that everything she has experienced thus far isn't real and has occurred within the realm of stories, a Sonoro created by the fractsidus. So the center point of Cristoforo's reality warping abilities is indeed the Sonorosphere he generates. He can indeed rewrite reality, but only within this separate reality instead of the mainstream one, much like what Rover suspects, at least until he overlays it onto the true reality. But the Sonoro isn't the only thing, and there are plenty of other details related to how his abilities work. Firstly, there have been several mentions of him using a script to dictate how the story plays out within the Sonoro. While not explicitly mentioned, it's very likely that the script contains details such as the template for the story, additional variables he has introduced, and even the roles of the characters who are involved. It is the medium through which he can manipulate the reality he has created. Given the amount of control he seems to have here, you might then think that this makes him somewhat omnipotent. The thing is, each of these details that he can rewrite comes with several limitations. For example, he often has to use a pre-existing story as a template or baseline to start from and cannot just change things on a whim. What I mean is that if Septimon's past has stories of heroes competing in the Grand Aegon, he has to write something similar instead of changing it outright, like having Lupa fly to the moon, for example. In Septimon, he uses Mia's story as an anchor to overlay it with Lupa's story due to their similarities. Frolova corroborates this as she tells Rover that even the wildest imaginations must pull from something that already exists. This might be why Christophoro is so interested in historical epics or regional folk stories, as it's something he requires to activate his abilities. Because of this need to adhere to a template, it also limits his ability to change the story and, according to Frolova, also forces him to play along with it, which limits his overall control. Aside from that, it's very likely that while Cristoforo can choose who takes part in his plays and even what role they take, he cannot influence what they end up doing. Frolova mentions that as a creator, he always hopes his characters will craft twists and turns that he himself cannot foresee, which suggests he cannot directly control them. Normally, this isn't that big of a limitation, as most characters aren't even aware they are trapped until it's too late, like in Lupa's case. However, if you happen to have exceptionally powerful individuals caught in the Sonoro, like the Rover or Cartathea, they might immediately realize the situation and work to undermine the script. When Cartathea confronts Cristoforo in her version of Septimon's altered story, she manages to almost defeat him. This causes Cristoforo to lose control of his script, which resulted in the Sonoro momentarily weakening and Rover being able to reunite with Cartathea briefly. While he can't force characters to do what he wants, what he can do is assign specific roles to whoever he wishes. According to Cartathea, roles define the identities of those within the Sonoro, and to lose your role is to lose both your name and memory. During the Septimon story, after overlaying Mia's story with Lupa's, Cristoforo essentially reversed their roles. He made Mia the main character of Lupa's story, effectively kicking Lupa out of her own role. This caused Lupa to forget her name and memories, while Mia, who was supposed to be dead, was brought back. It also allowed Mia to again relive her original purpose, which was to bring about the Dark Tide, but this time in Lupa's timeline or the future. As such, while Cristoforo cannot compel an individual to act in the way he wants, his role-swapping ability can give him some flexibility to direct the story in the way he desires. So to summarize, what we know about Cristoforo's abilities goes something like this. Cristoforo comes up with a script based on a pre-existing story and then creates a Sonorosphere that mimics reality. In this realm, stories manifest as reality and Cristoforo can define roles, specify characters, and perhaps even alter certain details. Once the Sonoro reaches critical mass, which is likely at the end of the original story, Cristoforo can then overlay it onto reality. This overrides existence itself, replacing the original timeline with the story he has crafted, effectively changing fate. All things considered, this is a frighteningly powerful ability. Yes, it has plenty of limitations that hold it back, but I think that most are likely unable to break out of it at all. Lupa was defeated the moment she was drawn into Cristoforo's realm of stories, and I think most others wouldn't have even noticed. The only way to circumvent this is for powerful individuals to take over the script from Cristoforo or subvert the story that he has written, something only the Rover and Cartathea have been seen achieving. On top of that, despite all these limitations, Cartathea herself speculates that his ability to reshape reality is far deeper than what they currently understand. Even though Frolova mentions that he often uses a template to his story, there is really nothing that says he can't conjure something completely new and force it onto reality. In addition, we haven't really seen how he actually uses his abilities and have only been on the receiving end of them. So there might be far more he can do and we just haven't seen it. But anything beyond this falls into the realm of theories, and I've dragged this video out long enough. As a lore theory crafter, Cristoforo's ability to manipulate reality and outright change the narrative itself through the use of stories is something I find immensely interesting. There are so many facets that could be explored here. Perhaps he is similar to Encore and can change reality on a whim, but is holding back. Or perhaps he can even have worlds within worlds, like Inception or something. Whatever the case may be, I sure hope he ends up playable, and I will likely be saving up for him in the future, unless, of course, Scar appears first. Now, just to clarify, there may be details here that I'm missing out, as I'm basing most of this on what was mentioned in the story and whatever readables I could find. So more details may surface in the future as the story progresses, and if you're watching this at a much later date, then just keep that in mind. If there are any details that I missed out, feel free to bring them up in the comments, and with that, I'll end the video here. Do you think that we've seen the entirety of Cristoforo's ability, or is he hiding something far more sinister up his sleeves? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found the video entertaining or even helpful, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.